I think if somebody has a potential living donor, it is the best option because it allows them access to a kidney much sooner as opposed to waiting for a deceased donor on the list. The quality of the kidney will likely be far superior to any kidney they could receive from a deceased donor, and the survival of a kidney from a living donor is far superior to any kidney from a deceased donor.
Someone who wants to give a kidney or any kind of organ doesn't want anything to get in their way, and that's how I was.
And I couldn't believe that Mike would actually even offer to do this for me, so that was really touching.
She saved my life, there's no doubt. Yeah.
Choosing to offer one of your kidneys to a relative or a friend with advanced and irreversible kidney disease is a profound decision and a very special gift.
It's the gift of life for really two reasons. One is it prolongs life, increases survival of the patient who receives the kidney, and it also improves quality of life so that the patient is kept away from the burdens of dialysis with a successful kidney transplant.
The kidney transplant program at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center was established in 1964.
We've been a very successful program that has combined both medical and surgical aspects of kidney transplantation. We've been an innovator in organ preservation and immunosuppression surgical techniques, and we continue to be a leader in the field of transplant, both from a standpoint of patient care and research.
Over the years, living kidney donations have become commonplace. Anti-rejection drugs have been developed which allow the body to accept the new organ. These drugs have also made it possible to transplant deceased donor kidneys. A deceased donor kidney comes from a person who has suffered brain death. Each year, more than 400 kidney transplantations are performed at UCSF Medical Center, and more than 1,200 patients are evaluated to determine whether transplantation is a suitable treatment option. Kidney disease is on the rise, and the number of people in need of a transplant continues to increase.
In this country, there are over 300,000 people on dialysis, and nearly 80,000 of those people are waiting for kidney transplants on waiting lists.
The California list contains more than 15,000 names. There's a shortage of kidneys available for transplant, so the wait may be several years.
It varies anywhere from about 4 years up to about 6.5 years, depending on what your blood type is. And that's waiting for a deceased donor kidney. Obviously, a live donor would shorten that time considerably.
When you look at waiting list patients, upwards of 10% of the patients per year will die while waiting for a transplant. So if you go down to a waiting list, and in your region you may have to wait 5 or 6 years, there's a 50% chance that you will either die or develop medical complications that would prevent you from receiving a transplant in the future.
A living donor kidney is the better option for the vast majority of patients.
Living donor offers a number of advantages. Surgery that's scheduled in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week. Clearly, living donation, if it's possible, will allow them to be transplanted sooner before their health deteriorates and offer them a gift of life that they can enjoy over a longer period of time. And in fact, living donor transplants function better and last longer than kidneys from deceased donors. In the first year of living donation, 97% of our patients are alive with a functioning kidney, which is a very impressive statistic, and obviously something that we're proud of both at our center as well as in this country. The results are superior to results when you get a kidney from a deceased donor. There's over 6,000 living donor transplants done in the United States on a yearly basis, and our program performs about a third of their transplants or more each year from living donors, and so it is a very important role.
We feel strongly that anybody under the age of 18 should not be considered as a living donor. But anybody from 20 to their 60s, and we've even used 70-year-old donors depending on their overall health. The major criteria to be a living organ donor is general health.
The idea of living donation has really expanded over the past 20 years to include individuals who may not be blood relatives of the recipient, and so friends, family members who are not related, co-workers, acquaintances are now becoming interested in serving as living donors because the need for kidney transplantation is there and the organs from deceased donors are not matching the need.
A potential living donor will undergo a comprehensive and thorough medical and psychosocial evaluation. It begins with completing a health history questionnaire.
We review the medical history questionnaire. If it appears that their history doesn't pose any significant barriers to transplant, we go forward and then try to determine whether that donor is compatible to the recipient. So we check their blood type. We then perform blood tests to determine compatibility with the recipient. We call this a cross-match. And if those initial steps show that there is the possibility that this donor could provide a kidney, then we start off by performing medical testing, surgical testing to determine the health of the donor to make sure that in fact they are as healthy as possible and that it's safe for them to donate.
The Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. So that's our main objective when we're evaluating donors. We don't want to have two people with compromised health when this whole process is completed.
We often tell the donors that it's the best medical evaluation they'll probably ever have in their life. We need to protect these donors.
At UCSF Medical Center, use of a device called a laparoscope has improved the recovery experience of the kidney donor.
This is a procedure that involves much smaller incisions than in the past, incisions that heal very nicely and also have much less pain. It involves 4 tiny incisions that are less than a ½ inch in length and a special camera and instruments to free up the kidney. And then at the very end of the procedure, about a 3-inch cut is made in the lower abdomen right at the bikini line so that the kidney can be removed. And the advantage of this procedure is none of these incisions have to cut through any muscle. So the recovery for the donor is a lot quicker and less painful than in the past.
A patient who undergoes laparoscopic donation can expect to be hospitalized for about 3 days.
They're usually eating within the first day after surgery, and usually once they're at home are able to get around and do their simple activities, and in fact are able to drive generally within 2 to 3 weeks. Most donors feel up to their normal baseline by about 3 weeks, but if they have a more demanding job with physical activity, we usually recommend that they plan on about 6 weeks off of work.
Kidney donors have the same life expectancy, general health, and kidney function as healthy non-donors. The living donor's remaining kidney will enlarge as it takes over the function of the donated kidney. Medication or special diets are not required once the donor has recovered from surgery. Donating a kidney does not affect the ability to have children. Potential donors whose occupations require extreme physical exertion should discuss this with the transplant staff. As with any major surgery, there are risks.
In general, the risks are small, and most of those risks are either preventable or, if they do occur, treatable. When you look at the surgical risks nationwide, the experience suggests that about 10% of patients will have some complication after surgery. At our center, our rates are significantly lower. About 6% of donors have some form of complication following the surgery. Now, it is a major surgical procedure in the abdomen requiring general anesthesia, and death is possible. At least nationwide, the risk of dying as a result of this procedure is about 1 in 2,500 operations. So it's relatively rare, but it is not zero in terms of that particular complication. Obviously, that would be the most serious side effect.
The initial costs for living donor surgery, hospitalization, diagnostic tests, and evaluation are usually paid by the recipient's insurance.
There are some insurance carriers that want the donor's insurance bill first. We ask the recipient to contact their insurance carrier to find out if there are any limitations regarding their benefits, lifetime max, if there is any limitation regarding donor testing prior to obtaining a donor. A donor should expect that they're going to be off work for a certain period of time. One of the things that we recommend is that they obtain long-term disability benefits if they are employed. The other option is for them to obtain health insurance prior to the transplant event. in order to avoid some of the costs post-transplant. And that would be if there are any complications after transplant, if they would need medication after transplant. In addition, that they will need one visit for a history and physical every year for the rest of their life.
A UCSF Medical Center financial counselor is always available to answer any questions you may have.
It's hard for many recipients to ask their family members and friends for a kidney. They don't want to come out and say, hey, will you give me a kidney? What we suggest is that it come up in discussion with their family members and friends that they've been listed for a kidney transplant, and let the potential donor take the lead in responding to whether or not they're going to come forward.
Even when family members come forward without any coaxing, oftentimes the recipients aren't very comfortable with the accepting of that gift. They're concerned about their loved one. They don't want to cause any harm to that friend, family member, spouse.
We reassure the recipients that if someone steps forward and raises their hand, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to accept them. We're very careful about the selection process. We want to be sure that we minimize the risks and that we do everything we can to make sure the donor is safe. Ultimately, that's our goal, is to keep the donor safe. And I think with those kinds of reassurances, then recipients and their families can have open discussions and really decide if this is an option that will benefit everyone.
Helping a relative or a friend with kidney disease put an end to dialysis and resume a more active and independent lifestyle can be one of the most rewarding decisions of a lifetime. Becoming a living donor takes love, courage, and a great deal of thought. Your decision should be made only after all of the risks and benefits are considered. You should never be influenced by pressure from anyone. The decision on whether to donate is yours alone. However, there are resources available to help you. This video is intended to answer many of your questions, and you can find more information available on the internet. Staff at UCSF Medical Center will help you with any additional questions you may have, so that you can make an informed decision. Remember, it's all right to say no. If you decide against donation, consider working with a transplant coordinator to inform the recipient so that he or she can move on with the search for a donor.
So now let me ask, how are we going to talk with the recipient? Would you like me to be the one to talk with him about this decision?
For a more personal understanding of the living kidney transplant process, we're going to introduce you to some recipients and their donors. Frank Jimenez was enjoying an active retired life with his wife Betty when a regular medical checkup revealed he had kidney disease.
I was devastated because I had never had anything serious. I'd have been a very healthy person up to that point.
Frank began dialysis 3 times a week at a center 45 minutes away from his home.
He lost weight and mass and presence. It was as though the dialysis sucked the life out of him. It was a life-saving technique. At the same time, it was so debilitating. Not only that, it took so much of their time that it was difficult for him to have a life, to golf and chop wood and do chores around the house. It made him tired.
If I'd had to wait for on a list, I probably wouldn't have gotten one for maybe a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I didn't want to face that dialysis that long.
It was very emotional. My sister and I had a discussion about who's going to give the kidney. We both wanted to give a kidney. I told her she had the kid, so I'd give the kidney, and that seemed to be what my parents wanted as well.
Lynn began the evaluation process at UCSF Medical Center to determine if she would be a suitable kidney donor. She met with the transplant coordinator after a cross-match test found she was compatible with her father.
Let's talk about what we will do next. It's a medical evaluation. Now we need to ensure that medically it's appropriate for you to be a donor, that you're healthy. That will include a lot of blood tests, urine screening. We'll even do a 24-hour urine sample to ensure that the kidneys are filtering all the waste products properly.
So how long is it going to take before I can give the kidney?
Several months.
Every time I went through a test until I got the results back, I was nervous and irritable and frightened. When I finally learned that all of the tests were complete and that good old kidney had passed, I was just elated and relaxed immediately. And then I went to UCSF's bookstore and I got a plastic kidney and I got little gold letters, and my husband and I wrote a poem in gold ink, and we put on the kidney Franklin, because my father's name is Frank and mine was Lynn, Franklin, and the date that we were scheduled for surgery. We wrapped it all up, and on Christmas Eve we presented it to Dad.
I thought the usual, another pair of slippers. And I opened this up and I looked at it and I said, "What's this?" She says, "That's a kidney." I says, "Oh, thank you." And that's when I realized that she was able to give me a kidney.
His first words out of his mouth were, "What time?" He had the date. He needed to know the time.
Mid-afternoon on the day before surgery, Frank and Lynn checked into the transplant unit at UCSF Medical Center, where there were assigned rooms. A series of preoperative medical procedures were performed, and a staff member discussed the surgery and answered questions. The next morning, Lynn was taken to surgery first to begin the recovery of her kidney. About an hour later, Frank was taken to an operating room next to Lynn's. While Frank was being readied, Dr. Fries, Lynn's surgeon, handed her kidney to Frank's surgeon, Dr. Sandy Fang, who rushed it next door to Frank's operating room. In the next hour, Frank's new kidney was placed in his pelvis, while his own kidneys remained undisturbed. The following day, Lynn and her father met.
At 7 o'clock the next morning, I shuffled down the hall and I peeked in, and he was pink. He'd been yellow, and he just looked alive.
How'd you feel?
It was wonderful.
Everything went real well. I was very, very pleased.
I knew he was okay, and I knew Lynn was okay, and so we could relax a little bit and look forward to being able to do all the things we did before.
Each year, more than 6,500 people choose to become living kidney donors. Their relationships and backgrounds vary, but they have a common goal: to share the gift of life. Simone Chow and Michael Wong were good friends when she was diagnosed with kidney disease. As Simone waited for a deceased kidney donor, Michael volunteered to help.
Basically, it's a selfish decision. If I give her my kidney, then she's around for longer. So, and she has a better quality of life. Her mom's gonna cook for me. So, I mean, there's that. And then also the fact that when I no longer have a kidney, I still have another kidney, and it hasn't affected my life at all, really. I mean, I have a scar, that's about it.
There's just so much freedom involved with getting a kidney, you know. And yeah, just I feel kind of like I'm back to where I was before I had kidney disease, you know, and it's just great.
Almost 4 years ago, Joanna Balestreri learned she would need a kidney. Her doctor recommended a living kidney transplant at UCSF Medical Center, and the search for a donor began. 4 people, including her sister and brother, offered to be donors, but tests eliminated each of them. Next, after learning more about living donation, Joanna's sister-in-law volunteered to be tested.
I researched a lot on the internet. I talked to the doctors. I talked to people who had already given, who had already donated. And then I started getting more comfortable with, okay, maybe I could really do this. And then I looked more on the medical side of how it would actually work and how I could function healthy till I'm 80, 90 years old. Hopefully I would live that long. And once I had that ironed out, I felt, okay, I can make a reasonable decision.
My donor probably was my biggest fear, getting someone else involved. So I think I worked through that because, you know, I realized that they were really, really cautious about everything. They went to the conservative side of a lot of things, and it was good.
I knew when I offered it up that it was going to happen. I had that feeling. So when I told her, she was ecstatic because we both had a really good feeling about it. And so we just went through the tests, and everything, as we progressed through each test, came back positive, and we got closer and closer. And then the doctors reviewed it in August of 2007, and they said it's a go.
Joanna received her new kidney at UCSF Medical Center, and it started working immediately.
I felt so energetic. I felt life. I just felt, it was incredible. I can't express to Diane, it is overwhelming. You can't even, it's something that I've struggled with for 30-something years. And today, or a week ago today, it just felt like those 30 years somewhere just evaporated.
It makes me feel like I've done something really nice for someone who really will appreciate it, and it will change their life. So, for me, it's a good thing.
My little girl said to me the other day, she said, you know, Auntie Di, she saved your life, Mommy. And I said, yeah, she saved my life.
Living donation is the best option in the treatment of kidney failure, but it requires an informed and thoughtful decision by both the potential donor and the recipient. We hope to have answered many of your questions in this video. The staff at UCSF Medical Center's Kidney Transplant Unit will be available to answer any additional questions you may have.
I'm thankful to be in here, really.
I'm really fortunate. Mike's my hero.
There's no possible way you can express what it means. It's truly a gift of life.